You just heard how many cases that we're talking about. In the real world, what do you think the number of cases in this country really are, given what we've seen with some of these anecdotal studies? Would you be surprised if it was 10 times as many? Would you be surprised if it was 50 times as many?
Yeah, it probably is 10 times as many. We're probably diagnosing 1 in 10 to 1 in 20 infections, and that's what some of the reliable analyses are now showing. The studies out of California, both the Santa Clara study and the one that was announced yesterday out of USC, they're using a test for antibodies, what people produce when they are exposed to the virus, where they're claiming that the specificity, the ability to actually detect antibodies reliably, is higher than any test on the market. They're saying it's 99.5% accurate. Most of the other tests that FDA has reviewed are 95% accurate. That doesn't sound like a big difference, but when you're dealing with a test that's probing for a low probability event, and that low probability event being having been exposed to coronavirus, because not that many have been exposed, small differences in the specificity of the test have a big difference on the reliability of the test. And so I think you need to put those particular evaluations in perspective. They might be pretty off. But most of the evaluations that we have now, whether it's from Seattle or from Europe or the ones out of New York, suggest that anywhere from 1 to 5% of people in hotspots have been exposed to this virus. And so if you apply that to New York, you know, it might be that upwards of 1 million people have been exposed to this now in New York City, in the metro New York area, inside New York City. And so that puts us at a case fatality rate of around 1%, perhaps a little less, what we've been figuring all along. But there's certainly underdiagnosis going on.
Beck?
Hey, Dr. Gottlieb, we just spoke with Barry Sternlicht a little bit about what the administration is now discussing with business leaders, this idea that they should be indemnified, not have liability for anything that happens once they reopen their business, either for employees or for customers. And I can certainly understand businesses saying we can't be held liable for this, for everything that happens. But at the same time, if you indemnify them from all of that, doesn't that potentially give them carte blanche to not take things as seriously, to not make sure that they are offering as many protections as they should? How do you balance those two sides?
Yeah, it's not clear to me what risk you're trying to mitigate here, because we have risk of infectious disease already in society, and businesses aren't necessarily held liable for outbreaks that occur when people come in and are undiagnosed and pass on an infection. You have outbreaks of measles. You have outbreaks of flu, certainly. You have outbreaks of chickenpox. You have outbreaks of multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis. And these happen in closed settings. They happen in amusement parks. They happen in theaters. And they're traced back to those locations. And we don't have liability being assessed, all over the economy for those outbreaks. I'm not sure why this would be treated any different from a liability standpoint or from an indemnification standpoint. I'm not sure how we would do that.
Doctor, what do you need for herd immunity? What's the minimum? You need 50, you think?
Well, it depends on the transmissibility of the virus. And so if we say that the R naught, meaning the number of new cases you get for each individual case, is 2, then you would need 50% of people to be infected. If we say the R naught is 3, meaning you get 3 new cases for every 1 case that gets diagnosed, then the R naught would need to be around 66%. And it looks like then you need herd immunity. To get herd immunity, you need 66% infected. It looks like the R naught's probably a little bit higher than what we first anticipated. So, probably the case fatality rate is going to be a little less than 1, and there was some speculation to be around 1%, but the transmissibility of this is going to be a little higher. So it might be above 3. Some of the modeling shows that it could be above 3. This seems to be a highly contagious virus with a lot of asymptomatic spread. The series on the amount of asymptomatic spread you get is anywhere from 20 to 40%, the reliable studies.
Scott, when is the remdesivir, the broader study, when is that expected? I'm just wondering, we saw the beginnings of some coming out. When is that due? Just wondering for us to keep an eye on it.
So there's 3 studies that we're watching. One is in 400 patients with mild and moderate disease. That should read out within weeks or a week. There's a larger study that was originally 600 patients. It's been upsized of severe patients. That's going to read out. It's going to take a little longer for that to read out, but there might be some interim data coming out of that before the study's fully enrolled. And then there's the study that everyone's watching by NIH, by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. That's a randomized placebo-controlled study. That should read out towards the end of May. And so that's the study that people are looking towards for a definitive answer. But the 400-patient mild-moderate study should read out much sooner, and that's going to give us a pretty good indication of whether or not the drug's having a treatment effect.
Hey, doctor, real quick, Georgia, as you know, is going to be reopening, or at least partially reopening on Monday, including gyms. Given the numbers there, is this advisable?
Well, gyms, nail salons, bowling alleys, hair salons, tattoo parlors. It feels like they collected a list of the businesses that were most risky and decided to open those first. I think that we should focus on trying to bring people back to work in factories, commercial settings, offices first, and open some of those businesses that are providing services, discretionary services secondary. Notwithstanding the fact that I understand there's a lot of small businesses behind these professions that are being badly hurt. But you want to get the economy going. You want to bring back the businesses that contribute more to GDP first if you can.